If you've ever dated somebody with a fearful avoidant attachment style, then you know how challenging that can be. On top of that, if you've ever gone through a breakup with one of them, then you know how life-shattering it can feel, especially if you've chosen to go no contact. It's an emotional roller coaster, and as someone who's healing his fearful avoidant attachment style, and as someone who has gone through no contact with one, I'm going to share exactly what fearful avoidants feel during no contact. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Charlie, where I talk about all things no contact and attachment theory. If you're going through no contact or simply just working to become a better version of you, then feel free to check out the links in the description. I offer one-on-one sessions with anybody seeking advice to heal from very difficult breakups. Before we get into what fearful avoidants feel during no contact, let's quickly define what no contact is. No contact is essentially just that, no contact whatsoever. This means no talking, no calling, no texting, no DMing, no viewing or liking their social media posts or stories, absolutely nothing. The reason we do this is because in an increasingly digital age, it has become harder to detach and move on from breakups, and it sometimes keeps them stuck in unhealthy relationships. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's discuss what fearful avoidants will experience during your time apart in no contact. Keep in mind that this video is framed from the perspective that the fearful avoidant is the dumper. The psychology of the dumper versus the dumpee during no contact is very different, so consider that as I go through these phases. The first phase that a fearful avoidant will experience during no contact is relief, and it's really similar to dismissive avoidance because of the very same reasons. If you haven't seen my video on what dismissive avoidants feel during no contact, then feel free to check out that video as well. They essentially feel relief because they finally made the difficult decision to walk away from the relationship that they felt has been keeping them stuck. And now that it's over, it feels like a weight has been lifted from their shoulders and they can finally just move on and live their life. Now, generally speaking, because fearful avoidants have both anxious and avoidant traits, they tend to lean one way or the other depending on the situation at hand. It's a very fluid attachment style, and they can switch between anxious and avoidant depending on what the circumstances are at play. Leading up to the breakup itself, they were likely leaning toward their avoidant side because they essentially were able to grieve and process the breakup before it actually took place. And so they essentially feel relief to try and reinforce this decision. One of the defining characteristics of a fearful avoidant attachment style means you have a limited self-worth, and you often question and doubt the decisions you make. So naturally, when you go through a breakup, after some time, you're going to doubt if it was truly the right decision. To circumvent this during the initial phase, fearful avoidants will engage in particular activities that will reinforce that feeling of relief, which is why they're able to essentially detach without seeming like they are emotionally swayed from the outcome. And from the anxious perspective, when you see your partner pull away in this manner, it can be very disheartening. So they do certain things during this time to reinforce their decision as a good one. You might find during this time that they reconnect with old friends or make new ones. They may even double down on their hobbies and other passions and interests, or they may just double down on work and pick up more shifts. If they're really unhealthy and they're trying to ignore their initial feelings altogether, you might find that they engage in more party-like behavior and basically consume maybe illicit substances to try and numb those initial feelings from coming up to the surface. If you're lurking their social media during this initial phase, you'll probably see them post about living and having the time of their life, but please try not to take it personally. It has very little to do with you and everything to do with them and the ways that they choose to cope with the breakup itself. Even though leading up to this point they wanted to be single, they are actually engaging in activities to not truly process what that actually means on an emotional level. They aren't fully grasping the idea that this person now is no longer in their life because they have these new distractions to help them cope through the transition. Please listen to me when I tell you that their feelings will catch up to them, and it's really only a matter of time because this relief phase does not last forever. This first phase can last anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks until they transition into phase 2, which is called the numbing phase. In the numbing phase, the impact of their distractions become less rewarding to their psychological reward systems, meaning the dopamine and other happy chemicals that are released during the relief phase become less impressive over time. This is usually because because when you engage in a certain activity or interest, over time, the psychological impact that can have on you becomes dampened or reduced. It takes a lot more in order for you to feel that positive feedback from it. And so during this time, it's really their body's way of telling them that it's time to really focus on those emotions and feelings they've been neglecting instead of just trying to push them down or ignore them altogether. In these moments, they're usually feeling sad, but they don't fully understand why. And they may also miss their ex and certain qualities about them, but they also feel happier in life now. So in the end, they end up feeling really confused about the situation, and they don't want to come across as though they've made a mistake, or perhaps they regret the decision. Fearful avoidants typically have negative associations with their feelings, and during this time, you'll see them make one of two decisions. If they lean more on their anxious side with their attachment style, they'll probably just emotionally break down and let all of those feelings flow, and they'll, in their own way, honor and worship those feelings. If they lean more on the avoidance side, they'll actually suppress those feelings. They'll push them down from the surface, and they will actually double down on those same hobbies and interests or distractions that they relied on during the relief phase. One is healthier and leads you to a better point in life much sooner. The other is essentially just delaying the inevitable. If those same creature comforts or distractions during phase one don't actually give them the same dopamine rush or the same relief that they experienced back then, they may actually start to adopt new forms of distractions in order to cope, and you may even see them start to date someone new during this time. It's a way for them to feel like they're moving on and growing and detaching without actually doing the emotional labor of understanding what all of that even means. This phase can last anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks until they enter phase 3, which is what I call the longing phase. It's during this phase where they begin to process the breakup, but considering so much time has passed, they may not actually be as emotional about it as one might expect. They tend to think about breakups at this point on a more rational level rather than an emotional one, and they may even have feelings like they've made a mistake or that they regret breaking up with you in the first place. Also, if you're the one that's been dumped by a fearful avoidant and you've been posting on social media during this time about all of the growth and healing you've experienced since the breakup, then that will only add to them feeling insecure about their decision, because they'll see that you're off living a great life now, meanwhile they're just starting to feel sad, down, and emotional about it. And that's what I mean about the psychology between the dumper and the dumpee. It's almost as if at some point they instantly flip, where one person stops being sad and starts feeling great, and then the other person starts to feel sad at that point. And this is essentially why fearful avoidants will more than likely come back during this phase, because they've taken the time to process their feelings versus their fears, and they've reached a point of equilibrium where they can actually do that comfortably, but then also take action on those feelings. If they do try and reconnect with you, at first it's probably going to be very casual. They may try viewing some of your Instagram stories because it's a way for them to show that they are looking at your stuff. They may also like some of your posts, and another one, they may also react to your stories. That's usually the next step, because they want to see if you're going to engage with their reaction. They basically want to feel as though it's okay to kind of engage with you on a higher level without being fully rejected. Essentially, they're just trying to test the waters. If you do acknowledge their attempts to reach out to you, then they will likely switch from full-on fearful avoidance to anxious, and they will actually take direct action toward you. You might find that they open up about a lot of things, especially about what's been going on since you've both been apart. However, and I really want to preface this because not everybody will have the same experience after this point, sometimes fearful avoidants will reach out, will reconnect, and share everything that they've been feeling and thinking during no contact, only to then pull away again. I know that this may not make sense to most people, and if this is happening with you, then try not to apply too much meaning toward it. Just take it for what it is at its face value. They've reached out to you, and now they're no longer communicating with you. All you can really do during this time is go back into no contact and focus on yourself, because chances are you've been doing great during this time. You don't necessarily need them to continue feeling great. If they don't pull away when they reach out to you and open up about everything that's been going on and everything that they've been feeling, then they will actually take more steps to try and possibly meet up in person. If there's someone that's, say, maybe a little bit more submissive, they may actually want you to offer that invitation. As a healing fearful avoidant, speaking from my own personal experience and a breakup coach, I'm going to encourage you to not take them back so quickly. It's totally okay to meet up with an ex, go into it with an open mind, and reconnect and just see how you've both been. That doesn't mean it necessarily needs to flourish into a new relationship right away. On the contrary, it is more than okay to make someone work for it again. If they've walked out of your life, then they need to prove to you that they are worth being able to walk back in. And when you allow someone to quickly come and go as they please, you indirectly tell them how they can treat you. Part of creating a secure attachment style is when someone chooses to disconnect with you, there are consequences. And to repair those consequences means they have to put in work and effort and consistency to prove that they are worth your love, your trust, and your respect. By making a fearful avoidant ex work for it a little bit and taking things slow, you actually do two things. You will learn very quickly if they have true intentions of wanting to reconnect with you. Chances are anybody that just wants to breadcrumb you or just wants an easy hookup isn't going to put in the effort in the long term in order to make that happen. The second thing you're going to do is you're also going to have that opportunity to establish your own boundaries during this time, and you'll be able to see how quickly they've actually changed in that time apart. You will learn if they're still the same or if they've actually worked on some of those issues, because during this time, you should be talking about the last relationship, the breakup, everything you've both learned during this time and done to heal and correct negative past behaviors that caused the breakup to happen in the first place. If this person has shown no signs of changing anything during that time apart, then you're better off protecting yourself, because you don't want to go back into the exact same type of relationship as you had the last time. So those are the three phases a fearful avoidant will experience during no contact. On paper, it may not seem like much, but in person, when you actually have to go through it, day in and day out, it feels like an emotional roller coaster, especially as the person that was dumped. If you do get back together with your fearful avoidant ex, then be intentional on what that would look like. Take some time to reflect on what worked in the last relationship, what didn't work, what you've both healed during this time, and sort of your intentions of what a new relationship would look like and how you can set yourselves up for success. As a healing fearful avoidant, I can assure you that change is possible. It takes a certain level of accountability, dedication, and consistency to make it happen. I hope you found this video helpful and insightful. If you would like to have a one-on-one session with me, then please go to the links in the description to get started. Also, if you're interested in learning more about fearful avoidance, then feel free to check out my other video on that topic here. I'll see you in the next video.